Hello and welcome to Retro Funtime. I'm your host, Roberto Villegas, and finally, we continue our time here in the Mega Man series. I hope you guys liked the intro. Special thanks goes to, of course, the guy that makes this entire show beautiful and pretty, that being Matthew Frazier. So go hit him up there at BlenderMF and tell him how good of a job he did, because I am super impressed with the sketch this time. It is probably my crowning achievement on this episode and this whole entire series of Mega Man. Speaking of which, let's continue that. We're finally tackling probably what I've learned to be the linchpin of the entire Mega Man series. If this didn't do well, we would not have the Blue Bomber in the way we know it. It is time for Mega Man 2.
Mega Man 2, or better known as Rockman 2 in Japan, is the follow-up game for Mega Man. With Dr. Wily escaping and creating 8 robots to take over the world, it's up to Mega Man to save it. With the poor sales of the first one, the game was developed as a side project coded during the free time between other games. It would go on to be a huge success and the best-selling Mega Man title, selling over 1.5 million copies worldwide on a number of platforms.
Alright, let's get into Mega Man 2. Holy crap, do I love this game. Little history about me in this game, quickly. I never actually owned Mega Man 2. I always had a friend of mine that owned it. My friend Nick, back in, I used to live in Flint, Michigan, which was a long time ago, but I adored this game nonetheless. I've learned in my research that Mega Man 2 is way more of an important game than I thought it was. It's a great game nonetheless. It's still a fun, god damn it, I'm already dying. We're already starting that now. Mega Man 2, I've learned, is actually the linchpin of all Mega Mans. Let me explain. So, Mega Man 1, as I've said before, just didn't sell so hot. You know, it's terrible, but that's, you know, how sometimes things go. So, normally Mega Man 2 should not have happened because, you know, if sales are bad, you don't really make a sequel. But for some reason, Mega Man 2 worked out and became pretty much the reason why we have all the Mega Mans now. Like, they hit on all cylinders in this game. Everything had to hit. You know, from music to graphics to look and feel to gameplay. And what's interesting is that once they got 2 pretty much settled out, everything just fell into place. It really became that this would be the dominant form of Mega Man for a while, and they would sort of they would just genuinely improve over this and sort of that, and add things to it, which in terms of, you know, 3, for example, would have the slide, 4 would introduce the Mega Buster in terms of charging, 3 would also introduce Rush. A lot of things sort of happened, and just, you know, everything kind of was thankful to 2. I am doing terrible on Bubble Man stage. I used to be able to rock the stage too. Let's try, you know. So it's very interesting how just everything happened because of this. And it's very much like, this doesn't happen in gaming often, where you take a second shot at a series that, you know, essentially failed. You know, and it's one of those things that baffles me, because we all, at this point in time, pretty much assume Mega Man as a, you know, a staple in gaming. You know, it's a classic, you know, Capcom character. It's something that I don't think anybody, you know, of my age, and even of anyone else, just takes for granted of existing. And it's so bizarre to kind of think of a world where this wouldn't happen. If 2 had been a terrible game, had been just like 1 and sold just as, you know, miserable, we probably would, again, this Mega Man, nothing would be, you know, Mega Man would be bye-bye. And it's such a strange thing to think about, and such a strange thing to consider, just how pivotal this game is, and how important it is. Here we are, finally at Bold Man. Bubble Man. Since we're playing on normal, it doesn't really matter what weapon we use, but we'll get Bubble Man first. I usually try to take care of Bubble Man as a first opening enemy. Technically, you can go in any order you'd like. Actually, you can go, but there's actually a specific order that makes the most sense. God, I love this game. I have probably beaten this game out of all of Mega Man's. This is the one I've probably beaten the most. And it's definitely one of the most interesting. A couple interesting facts of Mega Man. There's a password select system. Passwords were just red dots. They would add blue in the Mega Man 3, which will show when we get there. Interesting facts about Mega Man. This is the first one that, if you notice from Mega Man 1, we have a different Robot Master list. But not only do we have new ones, but we have the 8. This would be the official kind of thing they do throughout each one. This, again, to set up so many precedences for the series as a whole. The whole 8 Robot Masters, Dr. Wily as the main enemy for a while, Mega Man earning powers, and though granted, 1 set a lot of those up too, but Mega Man 2 would set a lot of those things, just, set in stone and kind of explain it. And give it the structure it desperately needed. Because 1 was kind of a mess. I mean, 1 had a scoring system for no apparent reason. There's a lot of those weird oddities. If you notice, a lot of that's gone here in Mega Man 2. That. Also, if you notice, Mega Man doesn't have as much slide as he did in the other one. Mega Man 1, for some reason, had a slippery kind of control. There's the only way to explain it. But Mega Man in this one has a little bit of a slide, but not a whole lot of a slide. Like, he does have momentum, but he can stop a little bit more on a dime. God damn it. That's going to be the phrase for the day. God damn it. There's our game over, finally. Let's continue a bit more. Let's continue with Airman's level. But yeah, Mega Man 2 pretty much set everything it needed to set up. And made sure that the series had a good standing point to actually get itself into play. We are actually now at time for this break, people, so I do apologize for that. Not apologize. What am I talking about? You guys are used to this by now. You know the role of the show. If you don't, well, check out the other episodes. So don't worry, we will continue playing some Mega Man 2. When we come back, we will continue the game, as I stated. Why I stated so twice, do not know. But in the meantime, why don't you guys check out this video? Since I kind of touched a little bit on the whole sprite blinking and things like that, why don't you guys continue on in our in-depth NES talking and learn about both the picture processing unit, that thing that puts all the graphics here on the screen you see in front of us, and the sound chip, the thing that produces all the music and fun and stuff. So go check that out while I keep playing Mega Man 2 here.
Hello and welcome to our in-depth analysis of the audio processing unit and the picture processing unit of the Nintendo Entertainment System. I know typically I go through a whole script and sort of read it out loud, but I felt the best way to explain these sort of really in-depth stuff is actually to go in and dig into an actual ROM and show you things like that. I'm going to go kind of briefly over things and sort of give a smattering of stuff, and I know it's a lot of information, but one of the best ways to learn is actually this. If you really, really want to learn more in-depth things, I'm going to link you guys to a video done by Brian P., the guy that actually made Retro City Rampage. He recently ported his game into a complete 8-bit demake, and originally the game was going to be for the Nintendo Entertainment System called, I think, Grand Theft Nintendo. And so he actually, surprisingly, even though his video wasn't intended to be this, really, really goes in depth on how much power the Nintendo had and what it could do. So if you guys really want to learn a lot of stuff, check out his video, and I'll include a link here in the episode so you guys can look more in depth and stuff like that. But let's just go over kind of quickly what the default system could do. Now, of course, anything I say here can be overwritten by memory mapper controllers, memory management controllers, which we talked about a couple of videos ago, so you guys can kind of look in there. So a lot of the stuff here in terms of sound and specifically graphically stuff can definitely be changed. But we're just going to go over the default kind of way that Nintendo handle things. The actual memory that was allotted to sprites was about 8 kilobytes of data. You could have 56 colors total, and each sprite could have 4 colors. Now, what people typically think of a sprite, they think of actually Mario here. They think of this whole little guy there as a sprite, when that's actually technically 2 sprites. A sprite in Nintendo sense is actually made up of 8 by 8 little things. Mario technically is a sprite in terms of memory. He's actually an 8 by 16 sprite. And that's basically what that means, is that he's 8 wide by 16 high at any given point. You could have sort of 2 options. You can either have an 8 by 8 sprite or have an 8 by 16 sprite in terms of memory. But Mario, in this sense, is made of 2 sprites. Specifically his head and his body, as he's small. As you notice, we have a sprite table here in our different palettes here as well. You have a disposable about 8. Now, I don't think that includes the background palettes. But one thing to note is that each sprite has about 4 colors assigned to it. That includes the transparency. So let's play a little bit of Mario and show you how this thing works. So we have Mario here playing. As you see, you can hit things. There's a lot of stuff going on right now in the Nintendo as we're kind of speaking about this. One of the big things it's doing is actually drawing the screen. I'm actually going to show you this while we're playing that. We're going to actually put up what's called the name tables viewer. This is sort of an emulator. It gives me a lot of different debug options. The way the Nintendo worked is it kept about 2 screens worth of memory in the game. Screen here and screen here. And the way it tends to do is that you have imagine the viewport of the game being this sort of block here, and that we have data on this side and data on this side. And as the player scrolls through this, data over here is being redrawn at the scan line. You're going to see the sort of scan line happen each time as it happens. So notice as this background changes over here. This is sort of how it kept the scrolling doing, whether it be horizontally or vertically. So watch as things happen. As you notice, there's screens redrawing. Mario shrunk. Even with let's actually head to a pipe so we can kind of demonstrate that stuff. I think there it is. All the sprites are disappearing. We don't see our sprite on the screen, but we see this one. So a lot of it's very much drawn in that kind of sense. That's sort of how all the screen. If you notice that was a complete refresh of the screen. There's a lot of different kind of things going on. And of course we can go more in depth in programming. That's not really the point of this. But a lot of the weird oddities of the Nintendo is purely just because it knew how to handle memory. There's all different types of scrolling, different types of things, different types of stuff you can do with the pattern tables. Another good example, of course, is The Legend of Zelda. So let's load that up really quick to kind of give an example of that. As you notice, the actual screen keeps up there. We can actually kind of scroll through the different screens that are in data. There's not that much in anything. It's kind of dull data right now. So let's look what happens. So as the intro loads up, which we've all seen before, already on the screen is the entire thing. It's already loaded up all that stuff there. That's why it went through 2 ones here, because we're kind of doing some programming things here. We're kind of dicking around with the way the code handles it. As you know, as it's scrolling down, refreshing that. It's not supposed to do this, but we're kind of having fun and poking around with the ROM. We can actually set the vertical scrolling. We can do all kinds of fun stuff. 4 scores. But if you notice a lot of things like that, let's actually lower the refresh a bit so you can kind of see some weird things. But the thing I want to illustrate is that it's actually scrolling through the data and going through and drawing what's on the screen well ahead of time as it scrolls up, as it does a vertical thing. Like I said, you can only, in the default sort of thing, you can only do one or the other, but obviously through memory mapper units, you can do 2, or you can do both ways. It's hard to explain all that stuff right now. And like I said, if you guys really want to learn, I'm going to link to here in the show notes a couple of in-depth actual programming into the 6502 in terms of assembly and how you actually get all the registers and things like that. But we're going to stop playing with the game. We're actually going to move on to the audio portion of that. Like I mentioned, then all this stuff can be overwritten, and in the Japanese side, it usually does. The Nintendo by default has about 5 channels: 2 pulse waves, 1 triangle wave, 1 noise channel, and 1 DPCM channel. Kind of does wave-like stuff. Some people that would use that as sort of the drum beat. One of the great examples of that it would be Sunsoft in terms of that. So let's actually load up another actual. I was going to play Mega Man 2, but I figure might as well show you Sunsoft because that actually does a little bit better job of explaining all these different audio channels, especially the DPCM. That's kind of a hard channel to grasp and understand. So let's load up Gremlins 2. Gremlins 2 actually is one of the better Sunsoft soundtracks out there, even though it's not necessarily the best game. Not a horrible game, but we won't go into that right now. We're talking about the actual development of stuff. So here's Gremlins 2, the new batch. So we hear the, let's play the typical background music there. If you guys can listen really closely, you hear that sort of, that actual guitar chord that's famous for Sunsoft doing. But let's actually kind of change some of the channels up on this one. We have actually the ability to turn off a lot of the different channels here. So let's turn off every single channel for the NES. Let me pull that one up. As you notice, we have a whole bunch of different things. Let's disable every channel. Completely silent right now. So let's slowly bring in each channel. Let's bring in the 2 pulse waves. Those are better known as the square waves. Usually they're typically used for the main riffs of songs, because you had a lot more control in terms of how the modulation worked and things like that. So people tend to use it as their sort of lead instruments. People would tend to use the triangle wave as a bass kind of riff because it was kind of low thing. But in terms of Sunsoft, what they would do is they would actually use the PCM as their sort of sound channel as we notice things go on. So as we slowly start pulling things up, we can have some interesting fun and get everything together. People would tend to use a noise channel as their drums. Konami was very, very famous for doing that. So let's pull up a Konami song. Let's see. Let's put on some music on here. So as we noticed, let's actually isolate just purely the drums. This is what they would tend to do. So it's very interesting, all the stuff, how all these sort of channels come together. So what happens is, if you ever wondered why when you did a sound effect, some of the music went away, it's because it took up one of these 2 channels, usually the pulse wave for that or the DPCM. What people would try to do in programming would actually keep the PCM wave, the actual wave part, specifically for sound effects. This wasn't always the case in Nintendo, and I mentioned before that on the Famicom, on different chips, you can override this stuff. So I just want to load up one quick thing. One of my favorite games that kind of explains this, that being Gimmick. It's a last kind of thing. It uses the FME7 chip. I've gone into an explanation of that, but just to kind of give a quick overview as to what can be done with audio differently, that can be kind of there. Let's pick a better song. This will be a good one. As you notice, we have a lot of different channels now playing here. So let's kill every single channel on here and show what I mean. So as you notice, we have nothing here. But we can actually pull in a lot of the extra data there. A lot of the Japanese chips would have access to the audio channel. It could actually bring up more stuff. We in the US side did not see any of this sort of thing. But it illustrates kind of how people got around a lot of the limitations of the Nintendo by just adding more things to the cartridge, the ROM itself, and adding chips there. Sure, that'd bring up the cost sometimes, but it would add a lot of these sort of things. In memory management controllers, you can get around the whole color palette issues. You can get around certain background limitations. You have a lot of power to do that, and it's really fun what people tended to do, because you just allow this thing to start to have things sound like this. So I hope I gave you guys a really quick overview of things. I know that there's a lot of data I just gave into you right now, but I think this is the best way to explain it. If you want to go more in-depth, check out the links I'm including in this episode, specifically on all the 6502 programming and everything in between. So without further ado, let's get back to gameplay.
And we are back here in Mega Man 2, taking on Dr. Wily. Figured we'd skip ahead a bit so you guys could see a lot of this game. Plus, as I mentioned before, a common theme among all the Wily stages is sort of the continuing usage of stuff. And Mega Man 2 really solidified Dr. Wily's stage and how things would be done. Because it would require you to use every bit of tools and powers you've learned over the time. You know, just pummeling you right now with a whole bunch of stuff. As you notice, for example, you can't get above here. Throughout the game, kind of as a proto version of the Rush Jet, you'd actually get a lot of these different sort of sub-items. So let's actually bust open sub-item. I think it's B1. Yeah. Nope, not the wrong one. That'll work for now. 2 is what I wanted to use, really. Or 3. But essentially, what would happen... Here, let me use that to pull it up. Sorry there. Essentially what would happen is, to get through a lot of these any of the Wily stages, you actually have to use every bit of power you had. requiring you to use all the items, different character weapons, things like that. It is very grueling on resources. And the one thing that is interesting of all the different Y levels is the fact that all the resources do not, you don't refill. Usually between stages, your weapon would refill and your health would refill. And health refill still here, but any powers that you've utilized in the game, the level prior, do not refill. And it is sometimes a bit crazy. So it requires you to actually think of things like that. Mega Man 2, God, this is such a... I don't know if it's a perfect game. I wouldn't go as far to say it's a perfect game. It does have some... I don't know if it has issues. Let me put it this way. It's definitely one of the quintessential platformers. For the time, they got everything right. There are some things I don't like. I never like the fact you can't shoot up with Mega Man. I always wish you had a bit more control in the way you fired things. And that's just me being almost a little bit nitpicky in that one. It's more of a, like, man, I wish they had that so I could shoot up. But they've never had that in any of them, so it's not like it would be, it would be different or something like that. But it's such a... But in terms of Capcom, it is definitely one of their better games. And as mentioned before, the guys who made this game would go on to actually make some of the other weird Capcom titles, such as the DuckTales series, and would actually utilize that. So it's, you know, teams of Capcom, here comes the dragon. This thing would always scare the crap out of me as a kid. Not scare me, but just sort of would be the hardest part of the game for me. Got it. God damn it! Speaking of death, that's also one of the things that sucks is the checkpointing in this game. Checkpointing in this game is a bitch. Actually, we'll have to go there. One thing I do, trying to think what else I can tell you about this game just really quickly without putting too much into it, or not putting too much into it. It's one of those games that, for me, I would always love the aesthetics of 2. Though I owned 3 as a kid, I would always love the 2's aesthetics. I loved the way it had the menu kind of looked. I loved a lot of the different things on there. 2 just seemed like the better game. Again, and knowing what I know now, it makes sense because it had to be. There was no room for error with 2. You could, you know, if you're on 3, fine, you can experiment and things like that. You could try a slide attack or something like that. You could try to do something else, introduce a character like Proto Man and make him interesting, sort of stuff. But 2, you had to make sure everything, god damn it. 2, everything had to hit. There was no room for error with 2 because of the fact that you were literally you're on borrowed time at this point. The developers were sort of given a second bite at the apple. And I don't think I know a story like that. There probably is other stories like that, but I've not, in my research so far, have yet to encounter a story like that, where it's this second shot at the game and such, especially when your first game just does so poorly. And so for me, hearing that story that I hear of Mega Man 1 just not doing it at all well, them getting 2 just baffles me still. I mean, I'm glad they did, and I'm glad Mega Man 2 is great. Like, I'm glad everything worked out. But it baffles me to right now to go and say Mega Man 2 might be the most important Mega Man in terms of history, just because none of this would ever happen. Like, everything that Mega Man is today would not happen. There we go. So we have a little bit of time to play. We can show you a little bit of level, but I'm still amazed the fact that now knowing how important this game is, like that's why it was so good. Like that's why it hit everything in terms of graphics. I mean, look at this. It looks. I mean, again, yes, we're now in different. Yes, in different now at times this doesn't look impressive, but compared to what we saw in Mega Man 1, I mean, we have complex backgrounds. We have moving parts of the background. We got a lot of this stuff here. We got various looking enemies. We've got different powers, different abilities. We have a lot of things going on right now, which is good. We have a ton of things going on right now. And it's something... Alright, let's get the heck out of here. Well, that happens. Alright, let's try that again. Never mind. You know what? We are out of time here, people. So on that bright and cheerful note, we're going to complete our gameplay portion. But stay tuned for my final summation on Mega Man 2.
Mega Man 2 is one of those strange games. It's not just a good game, it's a damn good game. The controls are tight, the music fantastic, the design is awesome. It set all the things that the rest of the series would use. So why is it strange? The truth is, it isn't a great game by accident, it's a great game because it had to be. With Mega Man 1 selling poorly, Mega Man 2 had to hit perfectly on everything. In my opinion, this game is the linchpin of the entire series. If this failed, there wouldn't be a Mega Man. No Mega Man 3, Mega Man 4, 5, 6, hell, forget about Legends, because seriously, if it were a bad series, who would have gotten excited about a failed game RPG spin-off? But that wasn't the case. Mega Man 2 would not only sell well, but practically set up everything for the rest of the series. Sometimes having to make something perfect can be detrimental. But because this damn game had to be great, it was great and pushed the series forward. Man, how do you follow up a game like Mega Man 2? Next week, we will conclude our look at the Mega Man series with Mega Man 3.
Thanks for watching this week's show. Of course, you can catch all of our previous episodes and join in the discussion at our website, CosmicRadio.TV/Retro Funtime. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at Retro Funtime and let us know how we're doing. Well, that's it for today, so tune in next time. But remember, it ain't art unless we prove it to be.